Hello, I'm Sarah Anne Shockley, and this is the Pain Companion, chapter by chapter. We're here today in this beautiful temple space because it's serene and quiet, but also because I thought it would be good to read the Pain Companion here, surrounded by the healing energies of so many spiritual traditions from around the world. So I hope you enjoy it. I originally wrote the Pain Companion because I was suffering from debilitating chronic physical pain for more than a decade, and I wanted to share with people the things that I'd found about living with pain and coming through pain. But since its publication, I've heard from many readers who are benefiting from it, who don't necessarily have physical pain, but have other kinds of long-term pain, like depression, or who are dealing with addictions, grieving, that kind of thing. So I offer this Pain Companion for anyone who's working with long-term pain, deep pain. I hope that it will be of help to you. So I'm going to give you a little introduction here to how the book is set up and what to expect for the videos going forward. Part 1, Pain Moves In, addresses the ways physical suffering affects our lives. It shines light on how pain moves in and takes over our experience and how we respond to it. And this is a really important part of the book to understand why I wrote it. It's so important to have our pain acknowledged before we can begin to heal it. And a lot of people tell me that their doctors, their friends, their family don't get it. They just don't understand what it's like to live with long-term pain, the physical side and the emotional side. And this section of the book can be so helpful to feel like you're understood by somebody who gets it. It might surprise you how important it is to hear about the experience of someone who's been through it, who's also talking directly to you about how it affects you. So I have found that one of the first steps in healing pain is to acknowledge it, acknowledge how hard it is, acknowledge that it's here, kind of let yourself be with it for a little while. Most of the time when we're in pain, the people around us, our doctors, our therapists, our family, whoever, want us to move out of pain as quickly as possible. And they're very well-meaning, and they mean to help us. And we love that. It's really supportive. On the other hand, sometimes we feel like we just need to be with it, just experience it. We want someone to see that we have it, how hard it is, before they start to tell us how to move out of it. There is something incredibly important about honoring the pain that you're in before you try to leave it. Part 2 is the emotional life of chronic pain. This addresses the very deep and persistent fears, anxieties, sadness, anger, and shame that living with chronic pain tends to engender, intensify, and hold in place. These are the unseen but potent sides of pain that are seldom talked about and usually given very little room for expression. They include emotional, psychological, and spiritual dimensions that are very much interwoven with one another and with the nature of physical pain itself. And I found this section in part 2 is so important also because when we're in physical pain, we often don't have enough bandwidth. We don't have enough left over to deal with the emotional pain we're in. In fact, we don't necessarily even recognize how deeply affected we are emotionally by living with physical pain. On the other side of it, if you're coming to this from emotional pain, we sometimes don't always acknowledge what it's doing to the body, how we're feeling inside, what it does to dampen down our energy and how contracted it is. So whichever way you're coming to this, from physical pain or from emotional pain, this section's really going to help you look at each of the emotions that come up and also how they affect you and also how to move through them. What are some of the antidotes to these situations that we find ourselves in, these feeling states, these deep emotional states, that well sometimes you feel like you've fallen into? How do we climb out of that? So part 2 also offers simple, practical steps to work to help ease psychological, emotional consequences of living with pain. Part 3, Meditative Approaches to Pain, presents 11 meditative exercises that I developed for myself to help open a path to relief and release. These are the most effective methods that I found to create a more beneficial and healing relationship with the pain in my body. More than any other approach offered by medical or therapeutic models, they helped reduce the amount of physical pain I was experiencing. So in this section, in part 3, we're looking at, they're not really deep meditations per se, they're more like active imagination. And some of them are even involve you doing some writing or some artwork, but they're ways of helping the pain express. They're ways of helping you create a dialogue with the pain inside so that you're communicating rather than pushing it away and trying to get rid of it all the time. We're going to start to try to understand, why is it there? What does it have to say? Why is it in my experience and in my body? And how can I help it move through by having compassion for myself and for the pain? In part 4, the final part, when pain is the teacher, I'll present some of the most important life lessons I've learned with pain as my mentor, which offer invaluable insights for living life with more ease, grace, and wisdom. This section also discusses creating true healing and transformation in life while moving on from the place of pain. And this is so important to understand what we can learn from pain. What gifts does it bring? And we don't want to think of pain as something that brings gifts. We just think of it as an awful thing we want to get through. But surprisingly, there are gifts of wisdom, of understanding, of being almost forced to come closer to oneself, to understand the core of one's being when we're in really deep, intense pain for a long time. So this is about, how do we do that? How do we gain the wisdom? And the sooner we begin to understand, appreciate, be grateful for the gifts, the sooner pain can move on, the sooner it can leave. It's done its job. I also want to say that I can't know your suffering or your specific pain. No one can but you. But I do understand the experience of being in long-term intense pain. And I understand the fear and the sadness and frustration associated with that kind of debilitation. So I can say that this book has been written from inside of pain. It's a perspective on the experience and the healing of pain that were seldom offered. I honor you for the courageous path you're on. May these ideas help you cultivate true, deep compassion for yourself and aid you in finding increased well-being, peace, and solace, as well as bodily and emotional relief. Part 1, Pain Moves In. Chapter 1, Life Taken Over by Pain. In the fall of 2007, I developed thoracic outlet syndrome, TOS, due to prolonged computer use in a non-ergonomic office setup. Simply put, the area between my collarbones and first ribs collapsed, severely compressing the space to less than 20% of its normal width on both sides of my body. This compression was excruciating, squeezing a major artery, veins, nerve ganglia, and the large scalene muscles running down from the neck to the first ribs, all of which must fit through this relatively small space. This caused intense burning sensations in my neck, deep aches in my palms, wrists, and neck, and shooting pains in my neck and forearms. A continuous migraine headache often flared alarmingly, setting the right side of my brain on fire. I had flu-like dizziness, weakness, fatigue, and loss of mobility and functionality in my arms and hands. Anything that required me to use my arms away from my body, even the smallest lifting, pushing, pulling, reaching, grasping, or carrying, caused a sharp spike in pain levels. I could barely turn or tilt my neck either side, up or down, and I had to move my whole body slowly and carefully to look at someone next to me. I walked extremely slowly, leaning forward, like a very ancient person in bad shape. And I'm telling you all this just to set up the understanding between you and I that I've been through something. You've been through something different, possibly much worse than this. But I want you to know I understand debilitation, I understand deep pain. I'm not somebody who's had a superficial experience. I'm not a doctor who's read about it in a book. I'm not a therapist who studied it at school. I've been through it. So that's what I'm establishing here, is that we have common ground. And hopefully just knowing that I'm here with you as this companion will be helpful to you and supportive. In an effort to restore myself to health, I tried numerous approaches to healing, both traditional and alternative. Although some of them brought temporary relief, none actually healed the TOS, and the majority of them immediately made things worse by further irritating the nerves and tissues. After I tried a new approach, it usually took a number of days and sometimes weeks for the flare-up to calm down and the irritated nerves and swollen tissues to return to a more stable state. Pharmaceuticals were also unsuccessful in relieving the nerve pain or aiding my overall condition. Instead, they created disagreeable side effects that added to the melange of unpleasant symptoms already affecting most of my body, so I quickly stopped using them. Since I couldn't dull the pain, I dulled myself instead and withdrew, becoming very still and quiet. It hurt to breathe deeply, so I sat propped up with pillows, my hands turned up and open, trying to breathe as lightly as possible and waiting for deliverance. If I waited long enough, I reasoned, the pain would go away and my body would receive the healing it needed through my careful stillness. By the fall of 2008, I had been in intense, unceasing, and debilitating pain for the better part of a year, and I was not making any appreciable headway toward healing through either traditional or alternative methods. I felt as if I'd embarked on a nightmarish ocean liner heading out into dark and rough waters on a voyage with no predetermined destination and no way to disembark. At first, I had thought everything was about to get better, and I would simply rejoin my life where I'd left it off. It was an excursion I hadn't desired or asked for, but at least it would soon be over, and I would carry on with life as usual. Every other malady I'd suffered had always ended. I'd always healed before. Always. But that's not what happened. Many months passed before I fully understood the extent of my injuries. After an MRI scan and a series of diagnostics, my neurologist carefully explained that the extent of my TOS was unusually severe. Sadly, he informed me that I couldn't expect to heal anytime soon, if at all. And in fact, the condition was often progressive. It could steadily get worse. In a 2-hour consultation, a leading thoracic surgeon went over my status with me comprehensively, explaining that there really wasn't anything he could offer except a surgery of dubious merit in which my top 2 ribs would be removed. The recovery period would be very painful and protracted, and for me it wouldn't be a permanent solution. I could expect my TOS to return. These prognoses landed like dead weights. I had to come to terms with the fact that I would most probably not be returning to work or my normal activities, ever. Along with living in pain, I realized that I was going to have to deal with the stress of making do with very reduced financial circumstances over a long period of time, as well as the ongoing sadness and distress of having had my normal, active life disappear virtually overnight. With the understanding that I was going to be physically impaired and in pain for a very long time, most likely the rest of my life, I entered a period of intense emotional challenge. My usual positive attitude faltered, and I began to experience decreased well-being and a constant barrage of worries about the future. I woke each day in the same dark state of mind, my body in extreme pain, and the condition of my life feeling the same. Bleak morning after bleak morning. Before my injury, I had considered myself resourceful, positive, intelligent, and capable. I certainly didn't expect others to figure things out for me. My inability to restore my body to health, therefore, was a source of deep frustration. Virtually everything I was doing to heal myself was leading nowhere constructive and often made things worse. What was I missing? What was I doing wrong? Dear pain, you have become such a forceful presence. It's almost like living with another person. My whole life has been hijacked by you. Other people say you come and go. You give them breaks for hours or days or even weeks. But you've decided to keep me company every single minute of every single day. I realize now that the twinges and aches I felt at first were only your early scouts. Now you're here in full force, pressing, insistent, nasty, intense. You are unstoppable and all-pervasive, and you stay and stay and stay. Why have you decided to stick with me so relentlessly, so adamantly, and with such passionate dedication? Chapter 2, The Submersion of the Self. When we experience severe pain, constant pain, insistent pain, the situation quickly becomes overwhelming. So much of our attention and energy is directed toward dealing with the pain that we can feel submerged underneath its demands. The choices that have to be made, the responsibilities we still have despite an impairment, and the sensations of pain themselves seem to be drowning us. It becomes difficult to think clearly, to have conversations, to be available for life, to be available to the self. Pain, therefore, rules our experience. It dictates how we can and can't use our bodies. We do only as much as it allows us to do. We sleep only as much as it allows us to sleep. When it has something to say, we are its captive audience. We interact with others with less enthusiasm and less energy. We become worn out and discouraged and completely at the mercy of its whims. Pain becomes our primary focus. That is its nature. Its presence is all-encompassing. When pain is either very severe or very long-lived, it can feel like a separate entity, a being with its own mind. It's like living with something or someone else in our bodies, a power unto itself, which we must serve. It has its own agenda and keeps its own schedules. Its needs are immediate and seemingly insatiable. We spend a great deal of time and energy bowing to it, taking care of it, trying to ease it, or imploring it to leave. Tasks that were easy before become difficult and exhausting. Before the brain even attempts to tackle a problem or meet a demand, it feels overloaded and overwhelmed. Things that require a response, the phone, a question, paperwork, can seem like an invasion or attack. So little of us is left that is not overtaken by pain, there remains almost no energy with which to make decisions, to think, to feel, to love. After living for days, weeks, and months with pain as the director of life, we can lose sight of our own primacy and the primacy of other people and situations that are important and dear to us. It's easy to feel irritable with everyone, with life, with ourselves. Part of the irritability is from the constant braying of nerves in pain, of course, but part is the frustration of not being able to control it. It feels like our bodies are no longer our own, and that is truly a very frightening invasion. It's too close, too intimate. In addition, there are the stresses that accompany every waking moment, including the uncertainty about healing, if and when it will happen, and the unknowns of how to survive practically and financially. We must face difficult questions, often meeting them with limited physical, mental, and financial resources. What will happen if I can't take care of my children? What if I can no longer pay my mortgage or rent? Should I take that drug? Who will help me make sense of all these forms? How will I go shopping, do the laundry, clean? How can I afford to pay someone to help me? Being in constant physical pain is like living underwater. The pain sensations are not only felt in the body, they seem to become an extended energy field around the body, creating a separate reality that no one else shares. There is no one inside your world of pain with you. You are utterly alone there. Even others who are also suffering do not share the same pain. The sensation of pain then creates boundaries around the entire experience of life. It becomes the environment and the substance in which the self is immersed. The world recedes, often to a seemingly unreachable distance. Only echoes of it remain. Normal life seems remote. Everything is filtered and distanced by the field of pain and the stress that comes with it, surrounding and penetrating all experience. Dear pain, I'm trying everything I can think of to make you happy, to make you calm down, to make you go away. I've tried eradicating, releasing, relieving, mitigating, cajoling, begging, and ignoring you. Yet you are astonishingly resilient. You refuse to budge. Almost everything I do makes you louder and more insistent. Today I was alarmed to discover that the only sensations I have left are painful ones. My entire body is a burning, painful structure. If there is a part of me that is not in pain, I can't feel it anymore. You have taken over my entire experience of my body. Are you trying to push me out of my body? I don't believe I am this pain, but where am I? What is left of me? Chapter 3, When Pain Won't Leave. Typically, in Western medicine, one of the first things a doctor does for us when we're in pain is to provide medication or therapeutic treatment that eases the discomfort. A treatment is considered most successful if it not only addresses the ailment, but substantially reduces or eradicates pain. In fact, in some cases, the only cure available to us is pharmaceutical pain relief. Of course, most of us are very happy to be on the receiving end of pain relief when we need it. Having the goal of easing pain serves the important purpose of helping us become more comfortable so our bodies can rest and thereby heal more quickly. This is all well and good. If the pain does end, the purpose is served and we heal. However, as we well know, not all pain responds to medication and treatment. When our doctors have run out of options and we continue to experience ongoing, even debilitating pain, when the level and duration of the pain tests the limits of our patience and our doctor's expertise, what then? Because we generally treat all pain in the same way, and because we have the understandable but unattainable goal of ending all pain as quickly as possible, the persistence of pain can't help but imply a level of defeat. When well-meaning doctors and therapists offer timetables and expectations for our recovery that don't work out, it can oddly and unjustifiably feel like we are ailing in other ways. We aren't a good enough patient. Our bodies haven't responded correctly. Something else is wrong with us. We're not normal. We must be malingering. Our condition of continued pain can seem to morph from something unavoidable as a result of injury or illness into something unresolved and lingering, perhaps even appearing suspicious to others not experiencing it themselves. This puts us in a very uncomfortable position because pain medications and healing protocols work on some kinds of pain, but not ours. We may feel that our chronic condition is a negative reflection on us. There is something wrong with us for continuing to experience pain. We may feel abandoned by the medical establishment, which may metaphorically and literally throw up its hands. Left to our own devices, we become, in many ways, our own last resort. Yet we have no idea how to access the switch to turn the pain off. Our distressing lack of clear movement toward healing is only underscored by the positive suggestions of others. Have you tried X, Y, or Z? The barrage of drugs we have taken, to no avail, and the various treatments we have undergone, with mixed or little success. It can appear that it isn't the drugs or the treatments that have failed, it's us. When pain remains despite pharmaceuticals, physical therapies, surgeries, or other forms of therapeutic treatments and alternative modalities, instead of applying more of the same, we need to consider changing course altogether. In my experience, short-term pain and chronic pain require very different approaches to relief and ongoing management. Chronic pain is a very complex condition involving much more than just the physical symptoms of the body. It includes emotional and psychological aspects as well, due to the incredible stresses of living with pain on a daily basis and the ramifications of basically losing one's life to pain. Dear pain, why are you still here? I am frustrated and annoyed. I seem only to be getting worse, and you are not leaving. You, pain, have moved in. I didn't recognize the you of you for a full 10 months. I treated you with respect, yes, but with the respect due a temporary lodger. I kept expecting you to leave. I dealt patiently with the extreme discomfort of your constant boarding because I assumed it was to be short-lived. You are like a guest who shows up, unpacks in the living room, pulls out an old brass horn, and starts playing loudly and out of tune. Tirelessly you play on day and night, as if to discover who will wear out first. I have. I'm worn out. Stop. Please. Just go away. Chapter 4. Feeling bad about feeling bad. If your pain is new, you may still be in a degree of emotional and physical shock. Shock from the illness or injury, and shock from the trauma of having your affairs, your work, your life, and your relationships superseded by pain. You may also suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. PTSD is a condition that occurs after severe stress, change, sudden loss, or injury, or as I have found, from long-term disability, chronic pain, or a life-changing illness. PTSD can cause you to become easily overwhelmed, highly irritable, disoriented, and terrified for no apparent reason, and to suffer from insomnia and nightmares. One of the reasons I talk about this is that a lot of times doctors either don't understand this or they don't understand the extent of this. They expect us to come to appointments and remember everything that's happened, to be clear, to be cogent of what's going on around us and for us and with us. And it's not easy to interact with the world as a normal person when you're in pain, any kind of pain, deep physical pain, deep emotional pain. And yet people around us somehow expect us to be able to sort of compartmentalize the pain, to be able to just be in pain with part of us, and then the rest of us is okay, like we're supposed to be normal. Or we can be in pain part of the time, but the rest of the time we're supposed to be able to respond clearly to questions, be able to fill out forms, be able to remember what happened yesterday and how did we feel, and we're barely stumbling through the day. So I'm talking about this PTSD and other things like this to help you understand that when you forget things, when you find it difficult to find a word, when your brain is foggy, when you feel like you can barely add 2 and 2 together, it's part of living with pain. So understand that you're not losing it. You don't have some kind of early onset Alzheimer's or something. It's an aspect of being with pain that your brain is not completely available to you, that your energy is not available to you in the way it used to be, that you're just not yourself. So give yourself a break, and you may have to explain some of this to people around you, that you're not able to be your normal self while you're dealing with pain. PTSD can cause you to become easily overwhelmed, highly irritable, disoriented, and terrified for no apparent reason, and to suffer from insomnia and nightmares. Living in pain for an extended period of time elicits its own strong emotional and psychological responses as well. These occur because of the physical discomfort we are in, obviously, but also because we are apparently losing the battle. We are at the mercy of something that has moved in and taken over our experience. We fear that in some hidden and insidious way, we are to blame for both its existence and our lack of success in making it all better. Some of these intense emotional responses include grief, sadness, loss, shame, blame, resentment, failure, isolation, loneliness, and powerlessness. Because these emotions are powerful, and because they may live with us for as long as pain abides, they can eventually override our experience of ourselves and our lives. They are understandable reactions to a life that has been overtaken by pain. But as time passes, we may lose our sense of who we really are. Days of joy and ease recede into the distance, and it begins to seem as if we have always felt this bad. We have trouble remembering how to laugh freely, what our bodies felt like without pain, and what it was like just to feel generally okay. Living with constant pain, I initially wanted to minimize any and all further suffering, so I tended to ignore or deny the emotional pain that I was also undergoing. Ultimately, this was not a helpful choice. Over time, the experience of physical pain and our emotional responses to it can become interlocked, each cementing the other in place, and vice versa. If you're coming to this from emotional pain first, the pain can move into your body, and the two of them become intertwined. They weave together like a Celtic knot, seemingly inextricable. Some emotions are contractive reactions to pain. When we are locked in these emotional states, the body responds by tightening and contracting. This contraction of the body serves to further lock bodily pain in place. It inhibits the free flow of breath and the free movement of life force and renewing energy through the body, and it impedes healing. Examples of feelings that tend to contract and tighten the body are resentment, bitterness, blame, and anger. Emotions that drag us down and sap energy also inhibit the body's ability to heal. These emotions are like inner weights. They pull inward and downward, and we can feel as if we're living at the bottom of a well with no escape. These include hopelessness, self-pity, loss, and sadness. In addition, we experience situational responses to pain that develop and establish themselves over time. I think of these as feeling states. They have emotional components but are experienced more as states of being. These include victimization, powerlessness, isolation, silence, and invisibility. As a last-ditch effort born of the desperation of having no effective avenues of physical healing, I began working with these emotional aspects of living in pain. If I couldn't heal my body right away, I could at least work with the other levels of pain I was experiencing. This began with the simple but surprisingly difficult practice of acknowledging the deep emotional pain that stemmed from, accompanied, and amplified my physical pain. From this place, I learned to extend compassion to myself. This practice of extending understanding and compassion to myself was more than just a psychological wellness exercise. It was a crucial interior movement that created space for real healing and unexpectedly began to relieve my physical pain as well. This concludes part 1, which was exploring how pain affects us when it moves in, when it becomes part of our lives. But we aren't going to leave it here. The next whole section is about working with those deep emotions, working with the pain in terms of its emotional aspects. This section is really going to help you look at each of the emotions that come up and also how they affect you and also how to move through them. What are some of the antidotes to these situations that we find ourselves in, these feeling states, these deep emotional states, that well sometimes you feel like you've fallen into? How do we climb out of that?